Hello everyone, Darkizer here again, welcoming you to the latest in my Space Engineers tutorial series. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I am embarking on a grand survival project. I am going to be building a Terran Battlecruiser from StarCraft 2. I am going to be doing this in survival mode, and it will not be for the faint-hearted. I hope to use this as a tutorial video for how to build large structures and large ships in general. So let's get started. Here's the basic layout of the ship. I have started it as a station, and I do have the voxel support turned off, so it's not going to be moving anywhere. It is a fixed point in space until such time as I actually convert it to a ship. But I didn't want to have to worry about bumping into it and knocking it about. Here is my solar array and my processing portion of my station with my very small mining ship that I built after I got started. I started this entire map on a typical asteroids map with a single respawn ship. You can see that I have upgraded my production apparatus quite a bit. I have a single refinery. I have an assembler. I have the rock crusher mod, the stone crusher mod, and I have the gravel processing mod that I'm also using because I will be making many more megatons of stone than I'm going to be needing. As I said, I started this project a few days ago with just my respawn ship, and I put a mining drill on the front of it, did some mining. I got lucky and I found a small amount of uranium and some silicon, so I have quite a solar array set up to run all of my equipment. I'm trying to make everything as realistic as possible. You can see my battery array there. But I did attach the platform to the asteroid, despite the fact that as a station it's not going to be going anywhere. And part of the project that I'm trying to make somewhat unique is the fact that I'm trying to keep all of this as true to life as possible. I want every part of the ship to be accessible by a crewman, preferably on foot. So you can see some of my earlier drilling efforts. I managed to fly around and I scoped out all of the areas nearby. I was fortunate enough that I had a small amount of all of the minerals necessary, including a small amount of nickel. And I spent the last few days building up the platform, building up my refinery process and so forth, and then I started on the project. I started with a double keel. The ship is symmetrical left and right with an even number of blocks. So I had to lay down a double keel, and I did that primarily because I'm using the Leviathan engine mod, and those engines are 16 blocks by 16 blocks on the short sides, and I'm going to have engines that are centered, so I had to have that even. And then I started laying out the basic shape. All of this is heavy armor. I cannot even begin to estimate how much steel plate I'm going to use. I also cannot even begin to fathom how many blocks this is going to be or what the final mass is going to be. But as you can see, I laid out the basic shape. I started filling in a 10 by 10 grid pattern. You can see some of the small blocks running along the keel there. I basically went back after the keel was laid and I started putting blocks every 10th block. And as you can see at the stern there, I started filling them into a 10 by 10 grid. And I plan on running that all across the ship, all the way up to the bow. You can see the command center. This is the neck area of the ship. The idea is to build this as the initial layer of the ship that this is going to be the framework that everything is going to be attached to, and then I will put all of the what I call plumbing, which is conveyors and conveyor tubes, all of the oxygen systems. It will have guns on it, of course, so I will have to have conveyor systems to convey ammunition and missiles and so on and so forth. But I plan on putting all of that between two layers sandwiched of heavy armor, and then the rest of the ship will more or less be built around that. It is going to be built as a warship, and I do plan on it being very, very survivable. As I said, you can see the blocks that I was putting down as spacers, and as I said, I did that every 10th block. I did that in part because I didn't want to lose count of what was going on. Since I am doing this in survival mode, I cannot use the mirror function, so I have to count out everything by hand. And I'm using these to help make sure that I don't lose count and I don't lose my place, to make sure that everything is symmetrical. The last thing you want to do on a project this big is to miscount something and then ruin your symmetry. Now, as I said, I am doing this in survival mode, but a lot of the build rules that I'm going to be using, or a lot of the suggestions I'm going to make, would be perfectly legitimate in creative mode. You simply get to place the blocks in creative mode as opposed to having to worry about doing all of the mining and welding. You can see the 10 by 10 blocks that I started placing there, and as I said, I'm going to place these all over the ship, or all over this layer of the ship, I should say, and these will form the backbone of this, I suppose you could call it a utility layer. This is going to be the layer where all of the guts are going to go, all of the gory bits, that all of the boring stuff. The things that make the ship work, as I said, conveyors, I'm going to put assemblers and processors, storage containers, and so on and so forth, but I want to put them in the center part of the ship. I will, of course, have to upgrade my apparatus over there relatively quickly. I'm going to be going through steel plate at an alarming rate. So that being the case, I need to make sure that I can generate many hundreds of thousands of steel plates relatively quickly. I don't want to get the project bogged down to the point where I am stuck mining for materials instead of actually doing construction. I always want the mining and material refining portion of the project to be ahead of my construction. And I think when I get started welding, I may have a problem with that. So as I said, when starting a big project like this, you want to lay out your basic shape. You get your basic concept of the ship. And whether you're using an existing ship like I am with the Terran Battlecruiser from StarCraft, or whether you're making up something just completely out of your own mind, you want to get a basic shape laid out, and then I would recommend starting to subdivide it into sections. You can't eat the entire elephant all at one time, so you have to break it up into bite-sized bits. After you get to the point where the project is laid out in stages, then you can start building things up in layers, and a lot of this depends on how realistic you want the ship to be. As you can see, as I said, I've upgraded my apparatus. I have included as I said, the rock crusher mod and the gravel processor, and that's primarily so that I don't have to waste all of my time mining, particularly for nickel. I got lucky and I had some nickel when I first started on the map, but I don't want to spend all of my video time mining and refining things. That's going to be pretty boring for you guys. I'm going to be doing 99% of this work off screen anyway. I'm hoping to do the entire thing off of the solar array. You saw the battery bank underneath, but we shall see. So I hope you'll join me on the project. It's going to be quite a journey. I plan on putting the link to the rest of my video series here at the end, as well as the link to the next part of the series. This is Dark Kaiser signing off.